Hello, welcome back to the channel, everybody. We are here to talk Gladiator II, and in the lesser known sibling of Glicked,
Mm-hmm.
but a movie that has been, I don't think it's even been in the works for 24 years. I think it's just, it happened.
Mm-hmm. For
Um,
sure.
but anyway, we're revisiting. It's a sequel to the fantastic movie from 2000 starring Russell Crowe, Ridley Scott, back directing after a couple of, shall we say, misses in The Last Duel and what was the other one?
And Napoleon
Napoleon.
and House of Gucci and
Oh yeah, House of
arguably
Gucci
Alien
too.
Covenant. He's been on a losing streak for a little while, I'm
Yes,
not gonna
Covenant
lie.
was long enough ago that I won't include it.
Okay.
Like that was what 17, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But three misses this decade so far is
yeah,
kind of rough.
it's rough, and I don't. After watching Gladiator, my first impression is that he's definitely lost some zip off his fastball. Like
Okay.
I still really like this movie, but there are some things here that just I don't know. Like Ridley Scott in his prime didn't do a lot of convenient things in movies. Like he was known for good storytelling and really quality
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I think there is some of that here. Some of the
Okay.
convenient stuff that sort of, just finds ways to make a story, a plot work without really explaining it all that much, but it's fine. The movie is still really fun. What were your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts going in? You don't have the same attachment to the original that I do.
No, it's funny. Like the original Gladiator is almost the movie is a myth for me as the character is within the world of this movie, right? Where it's one of those movies that I heard about so much from adults in my life, especially my dad was like super into it. And like everyone's always like, "Oh god, this movie's amazing. You got to see this movie." And like I just for some reason never have, and even still haven't. Like I wanted to go into this one kind of without that expectation burdening me, and with Ridley Scott's um with his like losing streak, I was kind of like nervous, and he's a director that like I like a lot of his past stuff, and I've been excited to see even some of his recent stuff. Like House of Gucci, I went to like an early press screener for actually when I was in college. Um
Nice.
um so I was a little nervous for this one, I'm not gonna lie. And I think like it took me maybe 10, 15 minutes into this movie, if even to realize like, okay, we're in good hands. Like I think the story is pretty solid, a little predictable at times, and like you said, a little convenient. But I think like the main appeal of this movie is just the fact that it is a big budget epic drama with huge action, and I think they delivered on both of those things really well. There's some incredible action set pieces. I think I got way more into the characters than I thought I would, and just all of the layers and the political intrigue going on in Rome at the time, both in and around the Colosseum. And I think it all came together for like a really satisfying finale. So I was into this. I really was. And I think
Yeah.
that it's one of those movies that I think like deserves to be seen on the big screen. I think it really commands your attention. And I think like the scope and the scale of it,
Yeah.
I don't think many of us have the home theater equipment to support that.
And I think Ridley Scott would agree because remember, he famously had that rant a couple of years ago about all the young kids ruined movies and ruined The Last Duel because they all watched movies on their phones, and
Yeah,
this one, though, is meant to be seen on the big screen. This
for
is a
sure.
dramatically better movie than The Last Duel, in my opinion. Uh, the Last Duel, while having a great cast, I love movies like that, Hayden, like that era and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. I found my attention just really drifting during that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not like me with a movie like that. This one had me locked in, like
Oh yeah,
from
for
beginning to end.
sure.
So, familiar formula for
Mm-hmm.
Gladiator. We start with a pretty large battle. This time, the Roman army conquering a Namibia, is it called? I forget.
Something to that effect.
I'm
We're gonna have to do a lot of proper noun lookups.
Yeah, I'm looking it up here as I speak. But large battle with like the sea and ships element brought in, which was cool. Like that was new.
Yeah, that huge naval warfare, right? Which comes back later in a much smaller way, but I think has a bigger emotional impact.
We meet Lucius right away,
Mm-hmm.
who at the time we think is Hanno. And later on, we learn Lucius, even though we knew going in he was Lucius. It's Numidia. Is
okay.
So
yeah, that's a weird call. I think with him, by the way, like I still because we'll get to it later, but like and folks watching the movie know like they want you to think that that's a big twist, even though it's been in like every trailer and it's been if you look up his name like on the cast list IMDb he's listed as Lucius, so it's just a weird decision, I think, because like I mean this movie was really, really heavily marketed. Like if you saw a movie,
I mean, not as much as Wicked.
No, but if you've seen a movie in theaters in the last 3 months, like you've probably seen a trailer that, you know, tells you he's Lucius. So I don't know, weird call.
But which brought me, I want to talk about it when we get into spoilers, but there was a moment, honestly, that made me chuckle that wasn't supposed to do that for a very specific reason. But anyway, yeah, so that happens. We get some naval warfare early, like the siege of a city, attack of a city, which was really cool. Like, it looks Ridley Scott does historical battles and action like really well. Mm-hmm. It helps that it's America's daddy trying to take over, you know, and he's the evil general for the Roman Empire. Pedro Pascal, who's fantastic in this film. I think not the best performance. I think there is far and away someone who steals the show in this, but he's great. And he is the foil for Lucius early until he's not, and then they're allies. That's one of the convenient things. Like that happens really fast and easily. So
I do think though, real quick though, just like the cast, I think you kind of alluded to a little bit with Pedro Pascal, but I really think like the cast and performances are one of the strongest things about this movie. Because not only are you getting a crazy good ensemble of A-listers, but they're all doing things that are either a lot different from what I've expected them to do and what they're usually typecast as, or they're just kind of showing range like I didn't know they had in them. Like the kid who's Eddie from Stranger Things being the Emperor, like he brought it. And Pedro Pascal brought it as this villainous force that like we haven't seen him as yet. Which I thought was
this villainous force with a conscience. I think he, along with one other character, probably had the most depth in the movie to him. But, you know, and then we have Paul Mescal, who's honestly like, I found the Lucius character to be a little one note throughout. But I also found the character really endearing. And somebody you really want to root for, and that's what it's supposed to be. And any disagreements with the following statement? In my mind, it was such a joy to watch Denzel Washington, one of the best actors of his generation, just own it here and be fantastic on the screen.
Oh, dude, it was his movie. Like, honest to God, I think he's the biggest takeaway from this, and I think I could easily see him getting an Oscar nom, if not a win for Best Supporting. And I think he should, right? It's his character has such fascinating layers to him and ends up being someone you root for and someone you root against like several different times in this movie. And I think that's what's so fascinating to me about how the story and all of the politics and the interplay work out is it's almost like you follow Lucius, but you also follow Pedro Pascal and Denzel Washington's character a
Macronus.
lot. Yeah. Great names. All great names.
Hard to remember, but great names.
For sure.
I'm currently looking at the review that I'm like 2/3 done writing. No, okay. Because I have them all there. So
the notes. Okay. But like this, you kind of get their perspective at different points in the movie, and like based on what you see and how you spend time with them, like I think it shifted whether or not these people are protagonists, antagonists, heroes, villains, you want to call it, and in a way that's like a lot of times when a movie or a TV show especially shifts around with characters and perspectives like that, I feel like I'm always kind of like, okay, like whatever. Like there's one or two outliers. I'm like, okay, like let's get away from here and get back to the person I really want to see. I never felt that way in this movie because they're just all so compelling.
I would totally agree with that. And I think that while, Mescal's Lucius is definitely the protagonist and mostly the point of view character, I think it's Washington's character, Macronus, that drives the story and manipulates the events that unfold. And I think all the other characters sort of evolve in reaction to him. And it leads to like all these great moments in the film where at first, like I was with you, like I thought he was kind of a good guy, and then it turns out very much not so.
Well, never really a good guy, right?
Yeah,
It was
at
this
least not
weird
awful.
dynamic where he's like, because he's a slave owner,
Right?
right?
Yeah,
Like he buys Lucius, but has this weird mentoring, fatherly air about him where he's like, I know your life sucks right now, but like I am going to get you out of here. Like that is the goal.
If
And
you kill enough people for me,
right?
Yeah. So that all leads to a climactic moment, literally at the gates of Rome, which was a really cool locale for that, I thought. And it was fantastic. So
yeah, I think all the
spoil
setting
that.
choices in this movie are great.
Yeah.
Like there's not a single part of this movie that I thought was dull or visually uninteresting. And that's what I think is so special about this movie being like a big epic with the budget it has is I feel like Hollywood has kind of moved away from movies, not movies of this size, but movies that have a budget this big. It's not a lot of it's not really going to props or costumes, and in this
Especially
movie,
historical,
so does or settings
drama.
and costumes. Sorry, yeah, for sure.
Like they'll go this big a budget hating on superheroes and shit, but not for this type of film.
Exactly.
Last thing I'll say, but I think before we score this thing and then jump into spoilers, is I think the action sets, especially inside the Coliseum, are like some of the best stuff I've seen in a while. It's really well done. The intensity, like you can feel it.
Yeah.
It's there. And there's a couple spots in particular where like you really, really, really feel like the urgency around it. And it doesn't have the weight to all of it that the first one did at times inside the Coliseum, which is understandable given the difference in the story. But this one just as good in terms of quality overall. I mean, are you with me on that, or how'd you?
Yeah, I mean, the action's great. The set pieces are great. They're super fun to watch just for the visuals alone. But almost all of them have really deep, like personal and emotional stakes too. So it kind of it adds to it. And I think like we talk a lot about a rewatchability factor and stuff like that with this movie. And I feel like this is one of those movies that like I'm probably once it's on digital, once clips are uploaded, like I'm gonna pop back in specific scenes and just revisit every once in a while because it's just they're just so good.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't really have a better way to describe it. It's just there are certain action scenes in this movie that are just really incredible to watch.
I completely agree. Well, we gave this thing an 8 overall out of 10, and I'll tell you, I mean, we were talking about this prior to recording, and like the scores are kind of all over the map on this thing. And there's some scores higher than ours. There are quite a few lower than ours. And I don't know, like you said coming in, the people that are giving this thing like, the place is giving this thing like 6 out of 10. You don't get it. I don't either. I think people come into a movie like this, and I think it's been 24 years since the original. So I think there's some romanticizing that happens in people's minds, and they remember a lot more action in the first one than there actually was because the action scenes were so intense
and were so memorable, right? That's what sticks out to you. Yep.
And I think a lot of people here feel like there was just way too much talking and all of that, which is as much of a reflection on our world today as it is on the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't find that to be an issue. And I guess, now everybody will jump into some spoilers. So if you have not seen Gladiator 2 yet, go see it and then come back and watch the rest, or just mute us and play the video. We'd appreciate that.
Yeah. And if you're just watching us, you gotta just watch the movie. You want to hear our take on it, want to hear our thoughts. We appreciate you sticking around regardless.
Yeah.
So, thank y'all for real.
So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and story wise, like I feel like the maneuvering and the political intrigue and all of that stuff makes what happens in the arena mean more.
Yeah.
Every step of the way.
Yep.
So to be like, there isn't just like scene after scene of bloodlust, is a little odd to me.
Right.
Considering that almost like there are a lot of places that are in agreement with us that Denzel Washington steals the show. Well, guess what? He didn't fight a single thing inside the arena.
No.
Like he's steering, he's the puppeteer, right? The puppet master, like behind the scenes. And guess how he gets things done? By talking.
Right.
So I guess I don't know. It's like you want to have your cake and eat it too, or you want to whatever. I don't know, but I didn't dislike that. I had no issue with that. Where are you at with that?
I mean, I thought honestly all the character work and all of the political intrigue, like I said, like I thought it was really compelling. Like I never was watching this and being like, oh, boring, y'all, get me the next set piece, please. Like I was really into it. I think the only issue I had with that is that like, because when I'm watching a movie that we're going to review, a lot of times I'll have like a running total in my head, right? Of like, what's the number I think is going to be. And at one point I was like, I think this is a 9. And what brought it down to the 8 for me is the fact that there's some of the dialogue I think just falls really weird. And I don't know if it's that they're trying to do this older kind of more poetic way of speaking. I think part of it is that. I think part of it is just some weird line deliveries. And I think another part of it is just, I think some of the writing is, I don't know, that like, I think the actual overarching story characters are great, but I think there's a couple weird lines that brought me out of it. Like, oh, that's weird. Like that felt like a unnatural thing to say. And I think that's what's tough with like, when you get to a director, writer, I don't know, did Ridley Scott write this movie actually?
I don't think so.
Okay. But I mean, even still, right? Like when you get to be a director of his size, I think people sometimes don't question you on things that need to be questioned sometimes. And I think there are a couple moments in this movie where I was like, we could have done another take of that. Right. And I think I felt it the most with Pedro Pascal's character. And I don't think it was down to his performance. I think it was just his arc moves so fast that he's just saying things that seem like totally antithetical to like what he believed and what he did like 5-10 minutes ago in screen time. Like you kind of alluded to it earlier before we went into spoilers, but like, in the very, very beginning, we see him as this like really badass like general who's in the fight getting his hands dirty. Right. And we get these shots where it kind of follows him just being an absolute menace, ripping through like 6 or 7 guys in a couple seconds. And then he comes home, he sees his wife, and he's like, dude, I hate war. Like, war is so fucked up, man.
Honestly,
and I'm like, what? you were just relishing in war like yesterday. And he's like, this is the last time I will ever fight unless I'm fighting to dismantle this government. And I'm like, what? Well, like I didn't get that sense from you at all.
So yeah, I mean, there's a couple of comparisons to Star Wars that I'm going to make here. First,
I felt them.
I had the same thought as you there. I was like, this is like if Darth Vader has the opening scene in Episode 4, and then when he's talking to like his, next in command or whatever, he's like, oh, I hate these battles every time. Like after he goes and like chokes people and throws them against the wall, whatever, he's like this is. But he doesn't say it like that. He doesn't say it like a person. He says it in this like dramatic way where he's like, I will never again raise my sword unless it's to the Emperor or some shit. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, look, this isn't anywhere near Pedro Pascal's like most over the top absurd role. That is reserved for Wonder Woman 84. Which people forget he's in, lucky for him. But he basically plays like a caricature of Donald Trump in that movie. But yeah, beside the point. Here, my other comparison to Star Wars was Hayden, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this once you see the original. But this one had an episode 7 feel to me, trying to hit a lot of the story beats of the original. There was a lot of that. So the original starts with this epic battle. And then it turns into a situation where Maximus becomes a slave, right? He's supposed to be next in line to take the throne. He becomes a slave due to, backstabbing, quite literally, and then has to fight for his freedom, et cetera, et cetera. If all that sounds familiar, it's because you saw Gladiator II yesterday. So,
right.
So all of that, I did find though there were a couple cool little moments that where Ridley Scott's good at this stuff. Where early you get the wheat, and then the first shot we see of Paul Mescal is like he's holding the wheat, right?
And he does the thing with the sand too, like Russell Crowe does in the original. There's a lot of visual callbacks.
Also made me think of Star Wars because I hate sand. It's anyway.
Well, it's funny because it's like I think there's moments in this movie where it's weird to me where it's been so long between this and the original that it's like it's kind of like when you go back to a franchise for the first time in a while, and you kind of start to see it not necessarily copying, but doing things or hitting similar notes or learning things from the movies that it inspired. Right. And I felt that like several times in this movie where I was like, oh, that's a kind of very Star Wars Revenge of the Sith type of moment to make. Or there's like, I don't know how familiar.
Like when he double fists the swords and takes off.
Right. And like,
which
and like,
cool,
I don't know how.
By the way, but
oh, great, for sure. And like, I don't know how familiar you are with the Hunger Games, but there's one scene in this movie where they're like, this is our plan. And I'm like, oh, we're just doing Catching Fire. Like this movie is just the Hunger Games in Roman times. Or that one specifically, right? As far as it's like, well, yes, like you're our warrior and like the people love you and support you, but you're also gonna be like the figurehead of this revolution, and where we're doing all of this like politicking and playing around what you're doing.
Where death is, we are not. Where we are, death is not. I'm like, what is that? Like it.
The first time I heard it, I thought I heard it wrong, and then like,
but then you get to hear it again.
By the last time they said it, I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go. Like,
right? Just gives you the goosebumps, as Dwayne would do in WWE. Come out and just be like, goosebumps on my arm,
right?
No, but the writer was David Scarpa, but I would bet anything that Ridley Scott was 100% involved in the story, right? Like coming up with the story before they turned it over for a script. So, yeah, I mean the story overall is good. I know we're nitpicking and making fun of a couple of things. One other thing, this is the part that made me laugh, by the way. Okay. So you are not a Lord of the Rings person, so you're not gonna like get this reference, but there is a key scene in Return of the King where Elrond, also known as Mr. Smith from the Matrix, comes and tells Aragorn, because Aragorn has been like this ranger where he's truly the heir to the throne of Gondor, right? And they reforged the sword that the king of Gondor is supposed to have, and he brings it to him in the camp prior to the large battle. And he's like, put aside the ranger, become who you were born to be. And he takes the sword and all that shit. That reminded me of the scene in that little like side room where they have fucking Maximus' shit hanging on the wall. Like, and it's finally like, now I'm going to put this on, and it reminded me that I'm just waiting for somebody to come in and be like, put aside the ranger, become who you were born to be, And I'm just like,
it is a very like superhero suit up kind of moment. It's so funny, dude. It's
Back in like the
a little
Schumacher
silly.
Batman movies, when it would show Batman at the beginning, like suiting up, and it'd be the quick cuts, you know, through all of it. Like it was kind of like that. But it's good that he put it on because that saved him at the end from getting speared underwater over and over and over. So,
literal plot armor.
yeah, it was literal plot armor. Sadly, not for the first Maximus, but you know, whatever. Yeah, so we find out there are some recurring characters in this, including Lucius's mother, who is in this film in a big way until she's just like taken out on a cart and tied to a pole with the whole Senate like chained around her.
Well, yeah, because the emperors are like, we gotta kill these traitors and whatever for trying to do, what are we gonna call it? Julius
Wasn't it Emperor
Sixth,
at that point?
little. Oh yeah, true. Yeah, emperor. You're right. And that was honestly more of a like Denzel Washington's character decision too, right?
Oh, totally.
He was like,
completely
you got to make it
that.
theatrical. You got to make it theatrical.
He was very Palpatine-ish in this movie.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and it's funny because like my partner who I saw this with, they commented on like just the big Greek theatrics of it all, of where they're just like yeah, we're gonna kill you, but we're gonna put you on like a pretty float that's like ornate with all these decorations. Like they were, and I liked that, the theatrics of everything, and the fact that I think the emperors were such compelling, such hateable villains because they were just so excessive.
Yeah.
They were excessive. They were. That's what I thought. I thought they were excessive, but I kind of loved it, right? Like it was, they were indiscriminate about their riches and what they would conquer, right?
Which was the underlying theme of this movie, right? Like the class warfare and all of that. That is really what we're getting at here and talking about in this movie. How
and then eventually there is a point where the bubble will burst, right? And that's what happens here. They just get too big, and that's their biggest general betrays them, because he gets home from this campaign and he's like, I got you this city, and they're like, that's awesome, like go do it now, go do it to India and Arabia. And he's like, that's like, even in that moment he kind of is like that, where he's like, dude, that's I don't know if that's a good call. He's like, that's gonna be very bloody, and I don't know if we can, what is his line, is he's like, we have to feed these people essentially, right? Like, do we have the capacity to have that many subjects? And it's just their absurd desire, these emperors, right? And I love the fact that it's like, they always have, like, in movies, like, I feel like the big leader, villain, whatever, of like these empires always has like beautiful women around them or whatever. This dude's got like a massive polycule of like, there's like women, there's like, he's got twinks, there's androgynous people, and it was just like,
it was very Roman. Like that's what Roman society was largely like.
No, for sure. That's
powerful people.
And that's, I think it's cool that they showed that authentically. It was just another interesting layer to me, where it's like, because to me, I kind of read that as almost just like indiscriminate. You know what I mean? They were like, I'm going to have everybody. Like, I'm going to have everybody I can. I'm going to have everything I can. They were not selective.
And I think that there's like parallels to today, where you see like, Pedro Pascal's character, Acacius, is on the front lines, and he sees the impact of the actions of the Empire on these people. And that gives him pause in many ways, right? Whereas the emperors, these two, the twins, they don't care. Like, they just want more.
Right. Like when they conquer a new land, it's like, oh, cool. Like now I have more slaves or more spices or whatever we got from them.
Yep. And they see people suffering and they find it amusing, right? Like that's what happens in this movie. So Denzel's character like plots to basically get rid of both of them, and does. For a brief time, Denzel reports to a monkey,
Mm-hmm.
which was interesting. Watch the movie for more on that if you haven't.
Yeah, because one of the emperors has that little pet monkey, and he named
Yep.
the monkey his first counsel, and
Yeah.
then Denzel's
Denzel's
second
second.
counsel.
And you can see the Senate, the whole Senate's like, oh Christ, all this again, all this nonsense from this dude. And Denzel handles it. His character handles it well. Macronus.
Well, and that's what's interesting to me about like the politics in the Senate and the structure in this is that like you can tell that like they don't like or agree with everything the emperors are doing, especially when it's just the one brother. They're very critical in their faces, but they always are. But they'll still laugh, they'll still play nice, and like the vote is still a unanimous yes for whatever they're trying to do at that moment. I don't remember what it was, but
all of this sounds oddly familiar. Hayden. Like it's
right.
So when we talk about the convenience pieces, there's Ravi, who's a cool character, played by Alexander Kareem, and he befriends Lucius in like the dungeons or whatever.
Mm-hmm. The holding cells, right, where they keep the gladiators.
Holding cells beneath the Colosseums, yeah, or the Colosseum. And we learn that he is now a free person who used to be a gladiator.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that he plays a pivotal role near the end of the film. He goes riding on horseback. He's like Paul Revere.
I had the same thought. I'm like, this dude is Paul Revere.
Yeah. Racing. And one of the most preposterous moments I thought of the entire movie was when he reaches the camp of this army that he's going to tell, hey, come on in and, free Rome from the emperors. Like he rides through the warnings to stop and like just rides right up to the tent of the commanding officer of the army.
Yeah, and he like pushes one of their
wouldn't have made
away.
it anywhere near that.
No, I feel like they should have. They could have totally had him like get off at the gate and been like, "I demand an audience with so and so."
Yeah, and it's not like Ridley Scott was worried about runtime here. I mean, it's already a 2.5 hour movie.
And the funniest thing about that too is they do a lot of like things where they show you. There's a couple moments in this where they show you that something's been going for a long time because they do like a match cut where like you were doing this during the day and now you're doing it at night, or vice versa. Like happens here, right? Like there's the thing where he's rowing by himself as he's training, from like day to night, and it fucking took me out in this movie. Like it made me laugh here because like he's riding the horse at like dusk, and then like night, and then like dawn. So the implication is that this dude just like full sprinted his horse
through the night
with no stops through like 12, 14 hours. And I'm like, dude, you would fucking die. Like the horse would die.
The horse would. And then, they just happened. Both armies happened to reach the gate at the exact same time.
It's right. It's again one of those things where it's very coincidental. It's very myth, fable kind of storytelling where it's just like, we've got to have this epic set piece. So
there's suspension of disbelief in any movie, right? But so that's where you're gonna have to have it here, and I encourage it because it is fun, and it leads to a really fun battle at the end between soon-to-be 70-year-old Denzel Washington and Paul Mescal for the future of Rome itself.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was going to play out like Paul versus Tyson when it started. I was like, does this man have
start buffering and shit or what? Like
no, just the fact it was just, he's like going to be wailing on this old man. And Denzel Washington had that fucking dog in him, dude. Like he got the upper hand. Like he practically won. He almost won that fight like several times. And I think
not for the plot armor,
for the literal plot armor, right? And I think that's like. But it's like it was a really compelling image, like right, that he's basically being protected by his father in that moment, and like I think to me like the coolest, most surprising thing that Denzel Washington did in this movie was this scene. Like I did not expect him to fight, and like there are certain actors that I feel like you just don't do certain things to because they're so big. And like seeing Denzel Washington get dismembered
Oh yeah.
is not something I ever thought I would see on screen. And it's
And
like
his face
that
afterward is like,
it got a huge reaction in my theater from like gasps, a couple laughs, like just people were just like, oh, whoa. Like that was not something I saw on the table. And it's cool because it's like they respect the 1v1 several times in this movie. Like there's a lot of scenes in this movie, maybe 3, where there's like really good fights. Like the music cuts out for most of it, and you're just hearing the impacts or swords clanging or the grunting, whatever. And there's people around them, warriors often, right, that are standing at the ready, but they're like, we're gonna let this play out as, and it's such a compelling visual. Like I love it. It's very interesting.
so this made me think of the Matrix. Do you remember Matrix Revolutions?
Mm-hmm.
When all the Smiths were watching
Yeah.
the one Smith fight Neo? Like that's what this was.
Right.
To see what happened. It was great though. I love
it was. And honestly, like I preferred this because of how emotional the stakes were and how good the fight choreo was. I would much rather have this over like 10,000 little CGI Roman army people fighting each other in an aerial shot as a finale. Because that's the alternative, right? And that's really what I expected once they were like, our army's meeting their army at the gate. I'm like, we're getting some slop here. And we didn't, right? And which I really respected. I think there's a couple of moments where they really show their restraint, and I think they do the right thing for the story as opposed to like the thing you would expect and the thing that would get the coolest set piece or image or shot for the trailers out of it.
So for me, like the most impactful fight scene in the movie was Lucius v. Acacius, America's Daddy. Even though it was kind of the most absurd, because he's been waiting this whole time to kill him. Because the one thing we haven't mentioned so far is Lucius' wife dies at the very beginning of the film at the hands of Acacius' army. He's wanted revenge the whole time, gets a chance to get it, and all of a sudden he just sees the light and like just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And drops to his knees to share the fate, and then Acacius gets hit by like arrows from everywhere.
Which was again an incredible image.
It was. It was cool. Second favorite hidden was the water scene inside the Coliseum, which was
I
really
think
cool.
That's like the defining set piece of this movie. It's fucking incredible, man.
It
like
really
when it happens, because obviously we saw it in the trailers a little bit, but when you realize we get there and because they're preparing for the rowing, and then you get there and they open the gate and that little couple of inches of water comes rushing in, I'm like, oh, here we go. And it was just such a great scene. It was really cool to see him kind of get to be the warrior and step in and like be a commander, right, to the other gladiators. And I think that was what was so cool about like the Colosseum scenes. Like each one is different and has a different set piece, a different gimmick, so to speak, right? Like there's one with the giant rhino. And I will say though, like I think this one goes a little over the top, like because like there's a couple moments in this movie where there's just like weird CGI choices that I'm like, we didn't even need to be here. Like we didn't need to see that. You did it a different way. And it's two particular instances of animals. One is the horde of like the baboons, the weird skinny ass monkeys they fight at the beginning. They look terrible. They looked at it. Like that was
it
honestly
was very
the biggest...
episode 2. And I know we're making a lot of Star Wars comparisons here, but
it was right. That's the biggest knock I think I have against like the look and feel for this movie. It's just like that scene was so weird and felt so out of place to the point of where like I leaned over to my partner and I was like, what are those supposed to be? Because I'm sitting there, I'm like, is this some like ancient animal that's like extinct or regional I don't know about? I'm like, honey, what the fuck is this? And they're like, I think it's supposed to be just like monkeys, but they're starving or whatever. I'm like, okay. And then, bro, I love. Like, I want to get this out of the way. I love the water fight inside the Coliseum. Like, highlight movie, epic set piece. Did we need like Sharknado looking sharks in there?
I know, and they're so fast. Like, holy
They're-
shit.
And apparently that's historically accurate. Apparently they put sharks in the water.
Mhm.
So hell yeah, go for it. I just feel like there's better, more sparing ways to show it than to just like have these like shiny, smooth CGI sharks zipping around.
And it was like they seemed like lightning fast. And I don't know, maybe it's just that other movies depict sharks swimming too slow. I don't know. But yeah, this one.
Well, I think it was also it's a really, really small body of water.
Is. Yeah, it is.
But it's one of those decisions where it feels to me like something an older director past their prime, dare I say, does, because I feel like we're seeing this now where like a lot of older directors are doing cool stuff with what they think is cool stuff with CGI that they're like, oh, I've never really done this before, so let's do this, it'll be great. And like some people, I feel like I don't know if it's an age thing, I don't know if it's an eyesight thing, I don't know if it's a sourcing thing, I don't know what the hell it is. But like I've noticed there's a lot of people that just don't have an eye for bad CGI. They just don't see it. Right?
Yeah.
They're willing to suspend the disbelief. Whatever it is, it doesn't stick out to them. And to me, like it stuck out like a sore thumb. And it just felt like
so much of that sequence did.
From
and
a lesser
I
movie.
really had to step back from being critical there and just enjoy it. And I did. Like it's one of my favorite parts of the movie, but it doesn't look great in many spots.
It looks like almost like a Marvel movie, kind of.
It almost looks like a really quality video game cutscene at times with the water and the sharks and everything.
And it just sticks out so weird because it's like this is a movie that's like really grounded, has a lot of big sets, has a lot of set pieces, has a lot of like physical, grounded, actual, tangible things comprising its action. So I think that it just feels so out of place. And I almost feel like I would forgive it more in a movie that just was like this. But it just feels so out of place here. It just feels wrong. It doesn't belong.
Well, and I can tell you, like, so this movie is going to get compared to Wicked because they came out on the same day, and box office wise, it's going to get compared, which I don't think is fair to Gladiator II, by the way.
No,
totally different scale of expectations for box office performance.
But a similar budget. So
a similar budget, yeah. But I think we know that people are going to flock to Wicked, and there's going to be a lot of repeat theater viewings of Wicked. Whereas I don't think that's
especially when that fucking sing-along edition comes out on Christmas Day, dude. You better believe.
I didn't know
this movie just get like a second.
There's already enough shit releasing on Christmas Day. Like, come on. Anyway, what I wanted to get at there was like, Wicked is a movie you would expect to be almost exclusively CGI, but that thing is overwhelmingly practical stages and effects.
Yeah,
like they planted a million fucking flowers in the field, and like it's
right. They went old Hollywood with that shit, and it looks great.
It does. So like if they can do it, then we can find a way to do it here. And I would think that old school directors, like 80-year-old directors, would really lean into practical effects whenever possible. But I don't know. I'm with you though. There are a couple moments where it does.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think just some of that older generation, they just think it's so cool and novel that they don't.
I know.
They don't have the eye to be critical for it.
They just learned how to use the iPhone, and now they're telling everybody all these cool apps, right? That they have.
So what are your groceries off this thing?
I know.
We can make sharks now, guys.
Right.
We don't even need to make a head like they did in Jaws and fucking hide it.
So story, we gave 8.5 out of 10. I think it's really quality. It does have some hiccups in it, but suspension of disbelief, you'll be fine. We've talked a lot about cast performances already at 9 out of 10. There's so many good performances, and there's one Oscar-worthy performance in this movie. At least one.
I was about to say, you think there's only one? So I think you can make the case for.
I can make case for more
Mescal as well,
but I do think that Denzel Washington was head and shoulders above. And that's not to take anything away.
I'd be shocked if he doesn't get best supporting actor for sure.
And I do think, Hayden, that the the pool for best actor is really deep this year. I don't see it. I'd be happy for him if he got nominated, but I don't know if I see it. All so right. Look, sound, and feel, we've kind of hit on this, but just touch on it really quick. I loved how this movie looks, especially when you're talking like ancient history. There's the temptation to have a lot of brown in this, which there is, but I think it's done in a way that just looks solid.
Yeah, this movie is colorful. It's vibrant. It's gorgeous. It's got like really impressive sets and costumes where it's just like, I feel like it's been a long time that we've got like a big historical blockbuster, right? Where it's like, oh my God, like you've got all of these ornate costumes.
Not for lack of trying by Ridley Scott.
But... No, this is what, his third go at it? But, you know, I mean, it looks great. Like I thought visually, I thought it was really immersive, really cool. And it was just like, I don't know, like I almost got emotional at times just at the scale of it.
Especially capturing Rome, like at that time, sitting in the hill and all of that. It was, it just looks fantastic. And
it does.
From the opening sequence onward, by the way, opening shots of wheat, take note, Zack Snyder. So it's done. Because Zack Snyder tried to make an epic wheat sequence, and he didn't even make the best fucking one of the year. And it's not like there's a long list of contenders. So, whatever. Anyway, 8.5 look, sound, and feel. We thought the movie looks good. Sounds good. It is intense where it needs to be, and it slows down and tones down the score when it needs to. And I think that's really important. I just watched a movie called Small Things Like These in theaters, and that movie has almost no score.
Interesting.
And it's so effective. It's such a brilliant choice because it makes you feel like you're there.
Right.
And like you're in the room with these characters, and it's so impactful. And like here they do that when that needs to happen. And I think it's a really good decision. So
for sure.
And that's where like decades of experience from a really talented filmmaker comes in. Intangibles. Hayden, how rewatchable do you find Gladiator II to be?
I think moments of it are very rewatchable. Like I said, there's a couple scenes, set pieces I'm going to really, really want to revisit. And I definitely do want to do like a double feature, watch both of them back to back and have the big epic, two-parter. Beyond
especially
that,
because they connect so much. I think that's
for sure. Like I don't think this is a movie that I'm going to be like, oh, this is like an annual rewatch or anything crazy like that. Which is fine.
That's right.
Not everything needs to be,
No, and I was thinking like there are movies that I'll watch at least once a year. This just isn't going to be one of them. But you know what? I think a lot of big historical epics are that way.
For sure.
I think Saving Private Ryan is fucking phenomenal, but I haven't watched that movie in 5 years.
I've only seen that movie once. It's very hard to go back to, right?
Yeah.
I think this is one of those movies that's gonna. I think it's honestly one of the defining movies of the year. Like
I think so too.
Just on the scale of just being an epic drama blockbuster, and the fact that like we got Dune 2 this year also, which this movie I think oddly enough hits a lot of the similar notes.
Different type of epic, but yeah, nice book.
You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. Like I think it's. I kind of feel like movies are back. Like I feel like we're blessed to have two movies that are doing something so weird and classic at that scale.
2024, in my opinion, was, as they say, a banger. And for the most part,
terrible year for games, incredible year for movies.
Yeah. There were some duds at the theater, but far
we've reviewed
more.
Several of them.
Yeah. Check out our Reagan review and my God, our Borderlands review. But there have been so many more that have just blown us away.
Yeah.
Or surprised us in a really good way at the very least.
And this is one of them. Like I honestly, my expectations for this, I did not think they were going to be able to deliver
I thought this had a chance to be historical megalopolis. I really did.
Wow. Okay.
And it wasn't. Not anywhere near it. It was so good. And I actually kind of liked Megalopolis, but I totally get why it got ripped to shreds as well. It is Megalopolis is the movie that's like so far up its own ass. It can't, anything. But this movie, there's a lot of just fun time at the movies here.
For sure.
So I think there's something to be said for that. I would say the rewatchability is rather low, but the fun factor is rather high.
Yeah.
So,
and Ridley Scott's not going anywhere. Like, he's got 3 fucking movies in the works right now. So maybe he's back.
And when he's 108, we'll get Gladiator 3.
Woo. Are you more excited as far as the future of Ridley Scott goes? Are you more excited for the potential for another Alien return or for untitled Bee Gees movie for Paramount? That's a real thing I just read. I was like, is he doing another? I mean, granted, this is Google's AI overview, so they could be fucking lying.
Is he just alternating between like biopics and like this historical epic now? Is that what we're doing?
Why the fuck not? Honestly,
I mean, I guess I'll be 100% honest. I don't want him to touch Alien again.
Whoa.
And here's why. And it's not that he did anything awful with it. I thought Covenant was like fine. But I loved so much what they did with Romulus. Yep. I think the series needs to continue in that fashion.
Fair enough.
I loved Romulus. And
it was good.
I want the franchise to keep going in that way.
Yeah.
Dude, that freaking scene in Romulus with the zero grav
peak
and the COD guns, like
yes. So, do you have any final things you want to hit on for Gladiator 2?
No, just go see it. Like, this movie's fun,
right?
It's better than I thought. I think you're the same boat there. Yeah, we gave it 8 out of 10. We gave Intangibles, by the way, 7. So, 8 out of 10 total for this movie. It is really solid, but you should see it in theaters. Like, this isn't one where you're like, I'm gonna wait until it's on, Max or whatever. Go see it in theaters. It's meant to be seen that way. But
do it on IMAX if you can. Like, honestly, it's such a big movie in scale. It's so epic that like the biggest screen and the loudest speakers in your area, like, make the trek. It'll be worth it.
Okay. So 8 out of 10 for Gladiator 2. That is it for us. Leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of Gladiator 2. And our next one up is, I don't even know.
I don't think there is a movie releasing next week. I think
no. Well, there's Moana 2. We're not doing that.
I think our big movie of the week next week is the WWE pay-per-view.
It is. So yeah, join us for that WWE Watch Along Survivor Series. All sorts of good stuff there. But otherwise, enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday, everybody. And yeah, we will talk to you soon. We'll be back first week of December with something. I forget what it is. So
Y2K.
All right. Oh yeah, Y2K. A24, right?
Mm-hmm.
A24 releases like 18 movies a year. They are the Nicolas Cage of like, publishers. So okay.
Hell yeah.
Here we go. Thanks everybody. Talk to you later.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.